A lot of people who are not training designers are confused about what exactly training is, how it works, what it can do for your organization and your people and the performance of those people on your team. And maybe you go and ask a learning designer, what is, training and how can I use it to, fix these issues I have in my organization. But I actually have a very different perspective exactly about what training is, and it is not what you think it is. And I want to get into why training isn't what you think it is and why training fails. Maybe you have a course library, a corporate university. Maybe you are, constantly trying to get these people trained. And it's really systems that succeed. And I want to share what those in decision-making roles, CEOs and executives need to know and what you got to do about it. You can't actually train your way out of a broken system. Training can only solve knowledge, skill, and attitude gaps. But many times, whenever we go and we look at what is the actual issue of performance, a lot of times that is only one tiny piece of the puzzle is knowledge or skills or attitude. A lot of times it has more to do with the systems that are being used in the operation than sending people off for a one-off training event. It's not necessarily just knowledge or skills. 70% of training is forgotten. And why is 70% of training forgotten? Because the majority of training that we have in our companies today is one-off training events. They go to a seminar on the Sandler method for sales for a 3-day seminar. They come back and you're wondering why their sales did not increase. Or they will go to a live webinar for training. And then they come back to their job and they just do the same thing that they did before. Or maybe that one-time event is you send them off to your learning management system and you say, oh, you need to take these courses and hope that that produces a behavior change. But when you're sending people off to these one-time trainings alone, 70% of what they learn is just forgotten. And companies keep investing in training that looks like this, these one-time events, as if it's the answer to solve their performance and their talent gaps that they have. And what if it's not truly just a knowledge gap, right? What if the real problem is the system? And I mean, by system, I mean the actual workflow or the tool that they're using or the workflow within the tool. And that's what I mean by a system. The myth is that if you give them more courses and more of these one-off training events and you build an entire, enablement program that just has them go through these online courses or goes and sits with an instructor, that it's going to correct whatever those issues are happening in the field. And the truth is that performance happens within the system. Even if you send them off to, for example, a recruiter, you send a recruiter off to be a better recruiter, right? Or to go learn about the applicant tracking system in another database, like a learning management system, and then they got to come back to the ATS to do their job. Where are they actually doing their job? Where are they picking up their habits? Where are they, messing up in the system? It's in the system itself, right? And performance happens in the systems and not in the slide decks or not in the e-learning that we have. So what if there was something different that we could do? What actually works is embedded workflows. And what I mean by that is having the guardrails, the bumpers when you go bowling as a kid, right? It keeps the ball going down the lane. That's what I'm talking about. Training needs to be embedded in the workflows. That means guardrails. That means nudges. That means, maybe even little prompts. For example, I have lots of examples coming up, but there are prompts that you can put into the systems that they're already using. For example, If they are in a Salesforce, well, you could put in a prompt in there to say, oh, this customer bought XYZ. They would be a good candidate for an upsell for this, right? Instead of sending the salespeople off, oh, they're not selling enough upsells. Oh, we need to go train them and all the products that we have. No, it should be built and embedded within the workflow. We also know that the best form of training is an apprenticeship model, right? And that is where they literally have a mentor or a manager guiding them along the way. But the cool thing is that with technology, you can literally embed a manager to oversee your employees within the system itself. Because we know that's the best way to do it in person, right? It's to give them a real guide and real support and feedback and things like that, right? Learning through doing and that iterative feedback. That's the best way for people to learn. And so how can we embed that in the systems that we currently have? If people aren't doing things, it doesn't necessarily mean they need to go to another one-off training. If they are not doing their job, they need a nudge. You can automate that, right? They need accountability. You can automate that. You can put in guardrails. You can automate the guardrails in your own digital systems. If they need to get updated on a new standard operating procedure, you can embed the SOPs right there in the workflow. That way, you are literally changing behavior in the system while they are doing the job, instead of taking them off the job, putting them into a one-time training event, and hoping they come back with that 30% they might remember to do the job better. And also, you can embed real-time feedback. If people keep filling out the forms incorrectly, put a guardrail in the system and in the workflow. It's so easy to do it today with automations, with dynamic automations that you can create with AI, right? And those different triggers that you can put in your workflow to keep them accountable, to keep the guardrails, to have a micro training pop up, if they keep clicking the wrong buttons, for example, right? That just-in-time training at the point of need. And that is the best place to put training. And it is so possible these days. And it's not a new one-off course, but it's embedding it in the actual workflow. So I'm going to go through several different examples, but here's one that I recently solved their problem. And their issue is that they are an engineering design firm. They have a ton of project managers because they are designing the engineering projects, right? The engineering designs. And so they have all these project managers, but they had no real system. They had a Google Sheet here and a Google Sheet there. They were meeting with the accountants once a month after, they'd already gone out of scope and out of budget. The project managers were not inputting their time correctly and in a timely manner into the system. And so they were also missing the accountability piece. And so the client came to me and said, oh, I have this project management manual that I need to train everybody on. And I started asking about the systems and the workflows. And what we found is that there is no dashboard for the executives to look at. There's no tracking of time and cost for the accountants to look at in real time. Everything is reactive. Everything was slow because there wasn't one central place where they were guiding their project management. They didn't have accountability built into their system, and so on and so forth. And so systems come before training. When you do a training, even those one-off events, all instructional designers will tell you, you need a process first before you build the training. Otherwise, you're just giving them theoretical knowledge, right? Theoretically, you would manage the risk as a project manager in this way. But it doesn't matter if they are learning how to manage risk if literally there's no matrix of risk embedded in the system. There's nobody overseeing it. There's no accountability about when they're going out of scope and so on and so forth. And so the solution really is a system with all of the different pieces built in. We know that as an organization, you've got to have accountability. You've got to have data tracking. You need to have training, but the training needs to be put into the system and into the workflow, right? And you need to manage the budget. Well, if you have an automated operating system, you can include all of that these days, right? Even the same thing with a learning management system, right? Many times even in there, right? They're just going to look for one piece of information. They're not looking to go through an entire course. Even those need to be updated in the way that people access information from that system. I digress. All right. And so what we did was we created an entire project management board using Smartsheets, which integrates nicely with automation and their other software that they have. And we embedded the process, the workflow, the things that we want them to do as guardrails in the very project management system itself. We included a bot so that if they have questions about how they do project management at that organization, they could just, type that question right into a trained AI assistant right there in the platform itself. For all of the SOPs, which are also in the bot, they can go and check those out right there in the Smartsheets. All the data gets pulled into their other system. The nudges and the accountability gets sent to the managers, gets sent to the group chat feature. That their personal example was a Google chat, right? And so that way, all of the systems are literally changing the behavior because they are putting the roadblockers. They're saying you do it this way and you can only do it this way, right? And you have to put in your time every day or every week. Otherwise, your manager is going to get notified. Otherwise, you're going to get these emails that are reminding you to do so on and so forth, right? And the other thing that we know about training that works is spaced repetition. You can literally build spaced repetition right there into the system. So, of course, the result is, they were lucky if they had 30% of their timesheets tracked, and now, it's at 100%. And that is because the system was fixed. So it's not the question of what training do they need. Where is the system failing? Have we set up the best systems for this operation? Have we put in the right guardrails? Have we put in the support in the system that they need when they need it in the actual flow of work? This really is a dream time for instructional designers. We've always known that training is best done in the flow of work. And before, that was very tricky and not quite as possible as it is now. And now's the time to update your systems and get the training and the guardrails and the automations and the accountability and the oversight embedded in your systems. So it's not a training problem, it's a system problem. And I want to show you a couple of examples here. So field technicians, right? And say it's like for utilities. So maybe they are doing inconsistent installs in the field. And the root cause, because every time you look at a performance gap, you want to look at the root cause. And the root cause was no adaptive workflow, right? Because you can't train all the field technicians on, well, you could try on every single use case and variable that might come up in the field, right? Because one might use this type of electric box or this one uses a different, it all depends, right? And so that's people don't even want to read a book. They want the cliff notes. And here we are asking them to finish a entire master's degree in their job when, they didn't even read the books in high school. They are doing cliff notes. And that's why we need to embed it in the actual system. And so maybe the solution is mobile forms. They're filling out, okay, it's this type of box with this type of wiring at this type of location, right? With a smart engine behind it, it can tell them exactly what types of things to do next or give them some kind of prompts as to how to, service those utilities. And that's an example of embedding it right there. It's not a go out and get a one-time training event. Say, for example, billing teams, right? Like medical billing teams. Maybe they have frequent coding errors. You're going to go make them memorize a whole new set of codes? No, right? The system doesn't guide them. The system should be guiding them on which codes they need to enter, or have support right there for them to ask questions like, oh, is this correct? And so it should have auto suggestions and embedded prompts right there in the system. That way they can't fail. That's the best type of training, right? That's the best time of way to solve a performance gap, is to make it so they can't fail. Maybe there's a software as a service company and they need to onboard a lot of reps, and they forget the training, right? And that's because there's no in-system reinforcement. They go through all the training at the beginning and then they're dumped into their job, and they forget their training, and they're just not doing a very good job actually doing their job. And so, but what if it was built into the customer relationship management workflow? Right? They get feedback on live tests. They get prompts. They get guardrails. Maybe it's a logistics company. Maybe the problem is they are picking the wrong SKU. And the real cause is not that they need to learn all of the SKUs. It's that they need real-time confirmation in the system that they're working in. So they need a barcode verification. Maybe they have some voice prompts or a recap, right, of what it is that they're doing right there in the very system. Help desk. Okay, maybe your help desk keeps escalating. Too many options. Many help desks, what do they have? They have a knowledge base that they have to go and search and dig through all these documents to find it. And, I'm not saying people are lazy, but people are lazy. And so what's easier for them, right? Sometimes it's not necessarily lazy. It's like, what's the path of least resistance? The path of least resistance is to just escalate it instead of digging through all these documents to try to find the answer. So maybe an AI assistant in the help desk tool that suggests the top fixes based on whatever the agent, the help desk user puts into that bot, and gives them the answer for their customer. That is training built right into the system. How about advisors in a banking situation, right? Maybe they're not pitching new products. And I think I kind of mentioned this example earlier, but the root cause is not because they don't have all of the products memorized, right? The problem is not a knowledge gap. It's a systems gap, because the CRM doesn't actually prompt them that, hey, there are these new products that would fit for this type of customer avatar. And so you need a solution that includes CRM triggers, training cards at the point of need, whatever those are. How about HR teams, right? Hiring managers. The problem is inconsistent interviews. They don't need to go be trained on how to interview people and so on and so forth. Instead, the process is not in the applicant tracking system, right? Or it's not in the system where they're actually, keeping all the client notes or things like that. And so the real solution is embedded question sets, right? Live scoring templates, and then feedback, even from a rubric that's built in to the system based on all of these factors that have been entered in, how they answered the questions and how you scored them, as to, what to consider next for this candidate. Insurance claims teams. Maybe the problem is misclassified claims. Again, it's not a training problem. It's a UI confusion problem. And so you need rule-based flags and then refresher prompts that pop up based on anomalies. Restaurants. This applies to every single type of industry. Anything with a system, especially a digital system. Of course, you can improve, in-person types of systems. But what I'm focused on are the digital systems that we're using. So the problem is the shift leads, they're not doing any coaching. So there's no structured coaching flow. What if they have dashboards and daily coaching logs, right? What if you build them a little digital system that makes it easy for them to do exactly what it is that you want them to do? What if the crews are misreading the specs? It's easy to do, right? Not everyone knows how to read a blueprint or the specs for a job site. They might just be the hammer guy. And so the root cause is, there's no blueprint update flow. And so they need tablet markups. They need video walkthroughs. They need ways to check that what they are doing is correct in the actual process. And I got another one, which is marketing teams and campaigns. So if there's frequent errors as far on your marketing team, maybe there's no checklist. Maybe there isn't, publish blockers. Maybe they don't have all of their rules and guidelines into one friendly AI assistant that they can use, or upload the things that they're going to use in order to check to see if this meets all of the checklist requirements. Again, something that can be solved with a system, a better system. Consumer goods, maybe they missed their quota, right? And that's because the sales process is not embedded. And so they need guided selling, objection scripts, and all of the things that they would need in order to make better sales, the upsells and so on, embedded right there in the CRM. If it's not embedded in the system, it's not changing behavior, right? Unless you have a manager literally following them around, watching over them, you are not changing behavior, right? You are just sending them off to a training, hope they remember 30% of it, and then hope they apply that 30% they remember actually on the job. But like, if there's a path of least resistance, what are people going to do, right? They're going to fall to that, not some one-off training event that they had. And so when you think about the performance gaps and these issues in your company, if you are bleeding time, money, or energy, you need to look at your workflows. You need to look at your systems and not one-off event trainings. So there are, 3 levels that you can actually embed support. So it can be reactive. It's triggered by an error. Oh, they tried to put in the wrong billing code, and then you have an immediate correction when a mistake occurs because it triggers an automation in the back end. Or you can make it proactive, right? You put the guardrails in, and so it guides them in advance. And it prevents those errors before they even happen. Even better, right? And the other thing is you can actually pull data from whatever platform or system, digital system that you're using, and it can pull the performance data, and then it can actually learn and improve and suggest new enhancements to the workflows, new automations, or maybe a new training or a new guardrail, right? And that can happen right there, automated in the back end to make it adaptive, right? It's not, I think a lot of people are looking at AI as making adaptive, personalized learning. I think it should make adaptive, personalized systems, right? That's the real power there. If you improve your systems and bake all of the key functions in that make your people move and align with the behaviors that drive revenue for you, you're not going to need, one-time event training. You'll need little pieces of support within the very system itself, a micro video, a standard operating procedure, a little tool tip or things like that. That's still training. Those things still need to be created, but they need to be created in the flow of work. So some of the things you might want to ask yourself, like, is it a training or a system fix? Like, are you seeing the same mistakes again and again, right? Maybe those repetitive errors indicate a system gap. Is the performance varying wildly, and so if there's inconsistency, it points to that you might be missing the structure that you need. Is the training not sticking? Well, knowledge isn't being reinforced in the actual workflow. And are the tools confusing your people instead of guiding them? So the interface design itself isn't supporting performance. And so all of these are not a people problem, it's a system problem. And so people don't fail because they don't know. They fail because the system doesn't support their performance. And you've probably heard a similar quote, but I've changed it up a little bit. And it's that we don't rise to the level of our training, we fall to the level of our systems. And that's true in the past, and it's very, very true today. And we have the power, the tools, and the knowledge to improve those systems considerably. And so I just want to thank you for joining me. If you've made it this far, I'm Dr. Robin Sargent. I build workflows. I am a workflow wizard. I use things like automation, AI agents, my deep expertise in training and instructional design. And really, I can look at a workflow, a system, and I can help you refine that system, tighten it up, and close any time, energy, or money blocks. If you're interested in seeing what I can do for you, or seeing if we are a match, feel free to contact me. You can send an email, info@idlecourses.com. You can schedule time, idlecourses.com/consulting, or you can send me a LinkedIn message. Either way,